Hello and welcome once again to the Four Wheels Good studio and another mix of motoring stories. This week we travel the world. We celebrate the German success story of the Golf GTI. Nicky Fox visits the Yokohama Tyre test track outside Tokyo, and we visit Madeira for a thrash around the island in a BMW Z3 Roadster. I say we, but unfortunately I personally had no part of that. That pleasure was left to the gentleman sitting to my right, who I'm sure you will recognise as our intrepid reporter, Mike Rutherford. Mike, welcome to the show. Nice to see you again. Now, we'll have more about the BMW a little bit later on in the programme. First of all, you've just been on a rather unusual trip, and I know you've described it as the drive of your life.
Yeah, it's easy to talk about the best car you've ever driven. It's kind of more difficult to talk about the ultimate journey you've ever done. I think I've probably just done it. 400 miles through the Andes, through northeast Argentina, on the borders with Bolivia and Paraguay. And the logical question, why? The reason was that we were test driving the new 1997 spec Chrysler Jeep Wrangler, the all-new Wrangler, new body, new interior, new suspension, engine improvements.
Well, you're kind enough to take a camera with you, so we've got some pictures to look at. Perhaps you could just talk us through these.
Well, that's the base camp. That's the lull before the storm, really. It was all pretty pleasant down there, but pretty soon it gets...
Hello, who's this?
I don't know who that fat git is. I think the camera's distorting his weight there.
We're having a sulk already.
Yeah, it's... I was particularly sulking, actually, when this local bandit actually walked along and helped himself to one of my many bottles of water in the boot of my car. We were on 8 litres of water a day, and the reason for that is quite simple, that there's a grave danger of dehydrating. That's just a little bit, just a very, very small part of the route ahead of us. And you can see here...
That's almost a road, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that was a real luxury. That was a proper piece of tarmac, but this is more typical of the sort of route, and I use the term loosely, that we followed. We followed the same track, really, as the Camel Trophy, which is the most demanding off-road journey in the world. That granite was lethal stuff. That was slicing the tyres. We got through 12 tyres on this particular trek.
That's a bit tiresome, having to change all those wheels.
It was indeed.
Did you have to do that?
No, we had servants for that sort of thing. In fact, we had backup vehicles. We had helicopters with medical teams on board. We had vehicles behind us who were refueling us. Yeah, that's interesting. They brought a Cherokee along for the ride as well, just to prove the point that it's not just the Wrangler that can do a journey like that. We ate that horse actually that evening.
He wasn't too impressed, I can see.
He knew what was coming. But yeah, there were Cherokees, there were Grand Cherokees there as well, just to prove that this is not just... These demanding conditions, although tough on the Wrangler, are also very, very user-friendly, if you like, for the more limo-like off-roaders from Chrysler. That's one of the many punctures, and I think you're about to see one of the many dead...
Tyre victim.
Yeah, well, that's one of the many dead animals we saw en route. So much cattle out there, wild cattle, it just keels over and dies when it doesn't... Nobody bothers to take care of these wild animals. It's a little bit sad, actually. Sure. But, you know, Argentina, that's its biggest industry, beef, and they've got an awful lot of it, again, as you'll see a bit later.
Right. Fistful of dollars stuff.
Yeah, in fact, come to think of it, I'm not quite sure why we actually ate the horse, in view of all those nice fat cows out there.
It might sound a very naive question, perhaps it is, but why Argentina? I mean, Chrysler, American company, why didn't they go to California or something?
That's not a naive question. It's the first question I asked when they asked me to go out there. And I said to them, you know, why this part of the world? Why such a demanding route? And they said, well, for that very reason. You know, I'm used to car manufacturers telling me to test drive a four-wheel drive vehicle on a piece of gravel path. And these guys said, this is the most demanding route in the world. This is one of the toughest roads you could find anywhere in the world. And as you'll see, there were more than roads. There were tracks, there were rivers, there was volcanic dust, all sorts of things. And they said, look, we're confident that you can't break these vehicles. We'll make them, you break them was the challenge, and we couldn't. We all got back in one piece, although a colleague of mine who shall remain nameless happened to roll his down the side of the mountain, but stepped away from it.
Came unscathed, or it was all right?
He was all right. I mean, they were more worried about the vehicle than him.
But you had this full backup of medical team and...
Yeah, we had the medics in the helicopters behind us, and mechanics, obviously, and people supplying us with water. I mean, quite seriously, if you don't drink that level of water, then you die out there. It's the most hostile environment I've been for ages. That guy there is James Barber, a Scotsman, one of the expedition leaders. See that machete in his hand? Isn't that typical? Scotsman with a machete. He was going through the countryside.
You can't say that.
Well, sorry to all our Scottish viewers.
Too late. There's the sun glinting there, and well, I have to say the Wrangler certainly looks the part. Good value for money as well, isn't it?
Oh, incredible. It starts at 14 grand. It's actually cheaper than the vehicle it replaces. And you can see that horrible volcanic dust. I mean, you can see some of it on
I know there's some later where you're being towed out of
exactly.
a rut.
And it's amazing, horrible stuff. You can get very, very stuck in that dust. And afterwards,
is this your handiwork here?
And that was some local graffiti artists that mysteriously appeared from the Andes. But you know, coming back to the spec of the Wrangler, it's the sort of, I mean, one of the great features about it, particularly after a journey like this, for example, is that you can actually hose down the interior, dashboard and all. Right. And these vehicles I saw, you know, only a day or two after the trek, and they look like brand new again. That winch on the front of that vehicle, that's driven by the expedition leader, James Barber. I thought it was nice that Chrysler of Detroit actually employed 2 Scottish expedition leaders to lead us, and we were the Brits, the Australians, the Tyres, the South Africans. A couple of Scots guys in charge. See, he's leaning out of the window there, not just looking through the front to see of the dangers ahead, but not that this is particularly dangerous, this stretch, but he's looking for rocks that might shred the tyres.
I get the feeling that it was probably far more dangerous than it actually looks in part.
Oh, it was, I mean, I don't want to exaggerate the point, but you know, we were putting our lives on the line. I mean, just quite frankly, when Duncan Barber told us to actually go out and drive down little ledges that were as wide as a pencil and soft as an apple crumble, you know, you realise that if you put a foot wrong, you go over the side, and we were 15,000 feet up at some point. So to say that there was sheer drops and immense danger is a massive understatement.
Obviously, a fantastic experience for you, Mike. Well, let's see some more of your exploits now, and we start, I believe, with one of your regular briefing sessions.
Driving this morning, the first section, we're probably going to find a lot of kids and their parents on the road. There'll be animals, there might be bikes, all sorts of things, so watch out for them. As you're going through any areas where there's people hanging about, slow right down so as you don't cover them in STUART, because I'm sure they must get really narked off first thing in the morning. They're up, they're clean, and the next thing a horde of vehicles come through and cover them in dust.
Well, the idea was, after this 100-odd mile drive I've had through dirt and grime and water and slime, I've been bitten, I've been chased by dogs, I've seen wild animals that I didn't even know existed, I fell in a river, I lost a 90 quid pair of sunglasses. And the idea was that I was going to be here in the wilds of Argentina, northwest Argentina, stop laughing you lot, northwest Argentina, near Bolivia, somewhere near Uruguay, I think. The idea was I was going to sit here, despite the fact that I've got problems with my eyes because of all the dust. I've eaten more dust today than Mr. Sheen. I've drunk more today than Oliver Reed, although it was of the non-alcoholic variety. They made me drink 8 litres of water because there really is a grave danger out there on the mountain range of dehydrating. And the idea was that I'd sit here on the bonnet of my Chrysler Jeep Wrangler, 1997 model, the vehicle that's been my Sherpa Tenzing for the day. But of course we're in this remote mountain village, the name of which I can't even pronounce. And unfortunately, there was a little reception committee waiting for us, and apparently they're all minding the car. And unless I give them, I don't know what it is, 50 pesetas each by the morning, they'll take the wheels off. So you're looking at Mike Rutherford's Minders. This is pretty amazing. We're somewhere up in a mountain range in northeast Argentina, apparently near the border with Bolivia. If I'm sounding a little bit strange, it might be due to the fact that the air is very thin up here.
Mike Rutherford, as you have never seen him before. That shot of you on the front of that Jeep with those kids will stay with me for a very long time.
Yeah, I've got to tell you, those little Indian kids, Spanish-speaking Indians, if that's not confusing enough, they actually live in clay huts up there. The only power they've got is solar power because there's an awful lot of sun. Hasn't rained up there for 9 months. 100 degrees Fahrenheit plus up there. I mean, how they live there, I just don't know.
Now, one could be very cynical about this, and four-wheel drives are generally very fashionable. They're a fashionable vehicle to own at the moment. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of owners who have four-wheel drives, the conditions that those cars have to compete with, have to actually endure, the most difficult conditions are avoiding other four-wheel drives down the supermarket on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So why was it so necessary to go to all this trouble to demonstrate that the Wrangler and the Cherokee, in fact, could actually do the business off-road?
Well, that's the sad thing about people who buy these vehicles, that they use them on the road 99.9% of the time. They just have no idea how capable these things are. And I think that it's quite brave of Chrysler to actually turn around and say, look, we've taken you guys to the Arizona desert, we've taken you to Australia, we've taken you all around the world. You give us the toughest routes, and we're confident that our vehicles will make it over these routes. And it's really a big demonstration from them that they've got the best four-wheel drive vehicles in the world, which I honestly think they have. And I base that opinion on the fact that I've done these drives around the world in Jeeps, and I've driven across gravel paths in things like Land Rovers and Suzukis and Toyotas. In other words, these other manufacturers are not as confident, they're certainly not demonstrating they're as confident about their vehicles as Chrysler of Detroit are.
And this was really the ultimate test, wasn't it, for this vehicle?
Yeah, and I mean, they're basically leaving themselves wide open to big problems, because had anything gone wrong with these things, then we'd be talking about it. We ripped a few exhaust pipes off, we ruined a few tyres, we rolled one over, but apart from that, they were great.
Well, it sounds like you had a real experience. Thanks, Mike, and we'll hear more from you, of course, on your report on the BMW Roadster later in the programme. OK, we'll take a quick break now, and then we'll meet members of a Golf GTI club, including a real revving reverend. Hello again and welcome back to Four Wheels Good. 21 years ago, middle-range cars rarely went faster than 100 miles per hour. But then a small, box-shaped car shot past in the fast lane. The Volkswagen GTI was born, kicking and screaming with a mighty 110 brake horsepower under the bonnet. What started out as a pet project for Wolfsburg engineers turned out to be a huge success story. And there are 3 new 21st anniversary Jubilee GTIs out now to celebrate. Ginny Buckley reports.
It's 21 years old, it's a cult object, and it's still as popular now as it was all those years ago. The Volkswagen Golf GTI has stood the test of time, and the anniversary issue Mark III is the latest Golf to woo the motoring masses. Success was inevitable, and it was true both of the first small, light, lively GTI Golf Mark I and of the second, more grown-up GTI Mark II, which was larger and a little heavier. In response to the demands of time for luxury and safety, it became the epitome of the manoeuvrable and powerful, the young sports car. Back in the early 70s, the German company were building a new family hatchback called the Golf. Thanks to a rogue band of VW engineers who tweaked the engine for maximum performance and stiffen the suspension to give better handling, we were given the delights of the Golf GTI.
The Golf was designed as a replacement to the Beetle, effectively, to be a bread and butter vehicle which would sell in large numbers, and in fact it quickly became Europe's best-selling car. And when Herbert Schuster, who was head of the development team then, put a hotter engine in the car and resorted the suspension and presented it internally, they thought, well, this will be very good as a limited performance series. We'll make about 5,000 of them, and that'll be it. And everybody at Volkswagen was totally astonished at the response the car received from customers and the press. It was the first performance family saloon.
The first GTI was born sporty and simple and around £7,000 when new. The small rectangular Golf Mark 1 didn't have any shiny trim. The bumpers and the window frames were finished in matte black paint instead of chrome, and GTI was emblazoned on the front and rear, whilst a sport steering wheel and the golf ball-shaped gear lever knob contributed to the pilot's feeling of the drive. The secret of its success is the engine of this first GTI, more precisely the unusually good ratio of unladen weight to performance. This gave acceleration to 60 in exactly 9.2 seconds and a maximum speed of 114. The Mark 1 still feels hot on the heels of current GTIs. In '84, Mark 2 arrived. The shape became more rounded and wider, and more power play entered the stage. It was more comfortable, larger and heavier than the first one, but despite improvements, the Mark 2 was slower accelerating from 0 to 60. We asked a couple of enthusiasts why they love their GTIs.
The car that I've got at the moment is one that was previously owned by somebody who had it modified, and the car is 175 bhp with a 0 to 60 speed of something like 6.5 seconds. So it's a very exciting car to drive. It's a car which doesn't age, and it's one that I feel very comfortable in. I would have to say that when I get into my current car, I always feel excited about it. I've not lost my enthusiasm in the 8 years that I've had this car.
Yeah, I've had this car for the past 4 years. It's got central locking on, electric windows, rear headrests, tow bar, BBS alloys, nice stereo. Basically a nice car, really. I'm very happy with it, to be honest. It's, like I say, reliable, economical, fast enough. Bodywork on it's superb. Warranty on Volkswagen is absolutely excellent. 6-year paint warranty on, no quibble at all. Like 12 months we had a new tailgate fitted, no argument whatsoever. It's done 90,000 miles now, never uses any oil. Gets a service every 6,000 miles. I just say spot on, really.
The Golf was now becoming one of the best-selling hatchbacks, and the 1 millionth GTI rolled off the production line in 1990. It wasn't just popular with the public, there was increasing interest from rally drivers who enjoyed testing its capabilities through all terrains and weather conditions.
I remember working with dealers when the first Golf GTI was introduced, and I think even they were quite taken back how the demand for that car got going. And then Volkswagen Motorsport got involved and used the Golf GTI for rallying and racing, and that again just helped to improve the image and seeing that it was a very good sports hot hatch.
In '91, the small body of the first Golf gave way to the solid large format of the GTI Mark III. In contrast to its Spartan ancestors, the Mark III has anti-lock brakes, traction control, power steering, electric operation for virtually everything as standard. The engine has progressed, increasing in size to 2 litres, but the car doesn't feel that much quicker. If anything, the progression hasn't been as dynamic after 21 years as it possibly could have been. Having said that, the Mark III is considerably heavier. The new Mark III, with a price tag of around £16,000, feels agile and alert, with plenty of grip and quick reactions via its sharp and well-weighted power steering. It stops confidently, although there's still a hint of the pedal sponginess which blights the Golfs of yesteryear. 21 years on, the Golf GTIs had to develop to survive, sacrificing the raw power of Mark I for the safety and up-to-date technology of the Mark III. The Mark III may not still be the class leader, but it's a solid car with a great engine, and it can wear the legendary badge with pride. However, the old magic is still there with the GTI Mark I. It's a raw driving pleasure, and that's what this car is all about. I'm sure all GTI enthusiasts would say it beats today's Golf GTI hands down.
Potted history of the Golf GTI there with Ginny Buckley. Now, good tyres are of course essential for the safety and performance of not just GTIs but for all road transport. We sent Nikki Fox over to Tokyo to visit the Yokohama test track, built and designed solely for the testing of tyres.
Just 4 patches of rubber allow a car to accelerate, brake and turn corners. In competition, the performance of tyres is so crucial that cost is no object. If needed, a new tyre can be designed, made and air freighted from the other side of the world in just 2 weeks. But when that tyre is intended for our road-going cars, it takes a little longer. Years of painstaking tests are needed before a retail high-performance design is released onto the market, and that takes some very special facilities. This is D-Park, the Daigo Proving and Research Centre a few hours north of Tokyo. Yokohama have spent some £70 million carving this impressive test track out of the hills. Its sole purpose, the evaluation of tyres. D-Park is home to some very experienced drivers. People who drive exotic cars hard and fast on an empty track and get paid for it. What does it take to get a job like that?
Many people can drive fast, but you have to be able to handle that speed, have a sense of the course and track at the same time. And just to be able to do that, to develop that skill, can take about 5 years. To completely learn the handling skills, it takes about another 10 years.
Mr. Goto, what do you do with the tyres here at D-Park?
Do various handling tests, high speed, wet and dry, handling, every aspect that needs to be tested for a tire.
So what is the most difficult and challenging part of your job as a test driver?
Of course, handling is difficult, but the most difficult point about the handling test is being able to distinguish when the tire reaches its limit. The sound can be as critical as 50 hertz, so you need to have a very fine sense of hearing.
But the man who listens to the tyres sing is at the sharp end of a huge factory research and development effort. It's lunchtime at Yokohama's Hiratsuka factory. That's the music for the traditional workers' exercise, but here they seem to prefer baseball and volleyball practice. And inside, tireless computers design the next generation of high-performance tyres.
To develop a tire for the replacement market, there are 3 major points: tread pattern construction, compounding. First, they take a basic construction and select a tread compound and perfect the tread pattern. Initially, they use computer simulations and laboratory tests. Then the tire goes onto the track, undergoes many hours of severe testing, and then that information gained here is fed back to the computer, and the whole cycle is repeated until Yokohama engineers are satisfied.
What are the tests you do?
First, we analyze what the customer wants, and then set up tests for aquaplaning and wet grip, as well as for dry grip and handling. And then there are tests for noise, vibration, and comfort. Then Yokohama finally road tests the tires before they go on the market. In Europe, for example, we would use the Nürburgring circuit to simulate the severe or high-speed European driving conditions.
It might look like a big, black, anonymous lump of rubber, but every high-performance tyre tells a story if you know where to look. In addition to the manufacturer and the model number, there's the size, load and speed rating, the direction of rotation, factory identification, and even your tyre's very own birth date. But there's one car whose 4 tyres each tell a different story, the Honda NSX. With a unique specification at each corner, the tyres were a starting point for the NSX design.
Back in 1987, Honda set out to develop a pure sports car, something which no Japanese manufacturer had ever done before. So they asked Yokohama to design the very best tires and suspension setup.
What kind of car did they want?
Honda
wanted the nearest thing to a Formula One car that anyone could drive. It took a year to get a basic construction design, then a further 3 years to refine the design. We used 6,000 tires in testing before we were happy with the final product.
And what was the final tyre design for the NSX?
It took a different tire at each corner. It has 4 different tires.
So, special car, 4 special tyres. But in the end, whatever the car, whatever the tyre, it's all aimed at one thing, keeping Mr. Gotto happy.
What was making him really happy was the fact that it was his tea break, I think. Interesting stuff, and we'll have more stories on tyre technology in coming weeks. Well, we'll have a tyre change of our own now, so don't you go away. We'll see you very soon. Welcome back, and Mike Rutherford's back with me again. We're about to see Mike's report on the new BMW Z3 Roadster. Mike, where did you get to go for this one, and why?
Why? Good question. Madeira. I didn't even know where Madeira was, off the coast of Africa.
Yeah, nice holiday island.
Well, I thought it was a bit of a carsy, actually, but I wouldn't know, really. So I was only there for about 15 hours, flew in darkness, had a quick drive of the car, ate some food, had 3 hours sleep and left the country again. But
so it wasn't really as glamorous as it sounds.
Well,
you didn't have any sort of chance to sort of sun yourself and
no.
a few drinks and stuff.
Well, there wasn't any daylight, I don't think. But you know, it beats working in a factory, that's for sure. But you know, why Madeira? The reason that they have these locations for these launches is that these are not launches from the UK arm of BMW. You know, BMW Munich launches the car worldwide. They have to find somewhere that appeals to everybody from around the world.
Sure.
And that was the centre of the launch.
Just briefly, how does this new model actually fit into BMW's marketing plan, do you think?
Well, I mean, to me, BMW have the most complete range of cars on the market. If you think about it, they come in with a little compact, around about £15,000 small hatchback in the sort of Golf category, and they go right up to the 8 Series, and there's everything in between. And this little 2-seater Roadster just fits in perfectly. Starts at 20 grand, amazing value for money, I think. And like I said, if there is a manufacturer out there that has a more complete range than BMW, well, I don't know what that manufacturer is.
This is the car that featured in the Bond movie, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yeah. And there are lots of different versions coming. We're going to see now the 2.8 litre version, and then we're going to see the motorsport version in a year or two's time. So, you know, they can't put a foot wrong at the moment.
OK, well, let's have a look at Mike's report right now. Here it comes.
BMW reckon that the only place in the world where you can find a 2.8 litre version of their incredible new Z3 at present is down here in Madeira. It's a 2.8 litre, almost 200 brake horsepower, top speed of around about 135 miles an hour. I expected it to be a bit quicker than that, but it's a car that's built not in Munich where you would expect a BMW to be built, but it's a car built in the southern Bible Belt by good old boys, basically. Farmers, rednecks, good old southern Bible bashers. I've got a factory down in Spartanburg in the Carolinas, and they're putting this car together down there. You might ask the question, why? Why would BMW want to build a car in the deep south of America rather than in its native Germany? Well, the answer is simple, really. It's a lot cheaper to do it that way. Get a greenfield site, get a bunch of old redundant farmers, get them on the production line, train them up to German standards, and you've got a very cost-effective production base. And that's why this car is being built down there. From the first impressions I get, this is built as well, if not better, than a German car. It's very, very well put together. And the styling, I mean, just ask yourself, I think it speaks for itself. Of course, styling is a subjective thing. You can't go around saying this is a good-looking car, this is an ugly car, because it just ain't like that. But I've got to say, I don't see how you can fault it. Everything is in the right place, and it's timeless. This is a sort of car you could go out in 10, 20, 30 years' time, and it will still turn as many heads, if not more, than it will today. In the same mould as the BMW Z1. Now, despite the fact that it's early in the morning and we haven't even seen daybreak yet, we've got somebody from BMW here just to make sure we don't nick any bits off this comparatively rare car, the 2.8 litre version of the Z3. Chris Willows from BMW GB, all very well producing a highly desirable car like this with very attractive pricing. But what about supply of that car? There have been a few problems, haven't there, with supplies to the UK?
Yes, they have. Unfortunately, right-hand drive cars are a fair bit behind left-hand drive, and in a sense, we're a victim of our own success. Yeah. The car is a runaway success in all markets. A lot of people want the car, and I'm afraid we've had to wait a bit longer. Having said that, our customers have been very patient, and we're looking after them by rewarding their faith by holding the car at under £20,000 and ensuring that the car will be delivered at that price, even though that will take up the best part of next year's production.
And then when are we going to see then the 2.8 litre version coming?
Well, the first customer delivery should be August next year.
Does that mean that if somebody places an order now, they'll get the car in August, or is there a waiting list where they have to wait a bit longer?
There is a waiting list. It's not a huge one at this stage because the car isn't, frankly, very well known yet. We expect that people will start putting their orders in fairly quickly for this car, so it's impossible to predict, but I would suggest that if someone actually desperately wants one, they rush down to their BMW dealer now, and we should be able to sort something out for them quite quickly.
It sounds to me as if a grey market is going to develop here, and that's something that you, as the importer, don't particularly like. Talk us through how the grey market works, and perhaps warn people about the implications of paying over the top for a new car in order to jump the queue effectively.
Well, it's very simple, Mike. We would strongly recommend that people do not pay over that retail price just for the sake of being first. It's a short-term gain to be the first on the street with a car. You inevitably will lose money by doing so, and although there's nothing we can actually do to stop it, we take a pretty dim view of it.
The advice is don't pay that price premium. If you want this car, pay not a penny more than the asking price from BMW. Don't get involved in this nonsense of queue jumping, responding to ads in newspapers. It won't be BMW dealers that will be trying to con extra money out of you. It'll be people who are selling their cars on for a quick profit. And believe me, you can make a big financial mistake, because although there might be a price premium for a few weeks during introduction, very soon that car will start depreciating, and you lose money on every car. You lose even more if you're paying over the top for the car in the first place. Well, the Germans have finally got out of bed and joined the Brits, an hour late, but no, to be quite honest, we've been waiting for daybreak, and it'll come eventually. I'm joined by Thomas Gubitz, one of the engineers from BMW in Munich. Thomas, simple question, why would anybody buy this car as opposed to something from Porsche or the Empire Mercedes?
I think this is very easy. If you look at the car, you can see it's a very emotional car, and at second, a car like this. It's a real roadster, and I think if you compare it with other cars, this is the real roadster you can buy.
We finally got our hands on this car. The Germans have wheeled it out of the garage for us, the 2.8 litre BMW Z3. And initial impressions are wonderful. Despite the fact that it's made in the US, it feels very, very Germanic. We can't really, around town, get a feel of how good this engine is, but it sounds beautiful, lovely and throaty, and you can just feel the raw power out under there just waiting to be unleashed, but not around here and not today, I fear. This is a car that's quick enough for anyone, believe me. Well, see, that's the trouble with a car like this. I mean, you've got all this potential performance under the bonnet, and there's very little you can do with it, because every 2 minutes, no matter whether you're in Madeira, where we are now, or you're on the South Circular in London, you can't really put your foot down. Although I did then, I suppose. Well, it goes. I mean, it goes like you'd expect a 2.8 litre BMW to go. Quite frankly, you do climb in some cars and sit and look at the dashboard and the instrumentation and the switchgear, and you wonder who designed it. BMW dashboard layout and interior design is, for me, just absolutely perfect. I feel very happy with this sort of setup. Nice, simple, clear dials, no nonsense, dead classy, sort of almost minimalist, and everything, you know where everything is, it's all logical. The only thing I would like to see in BMWs, like I'd like to see in all cars, is a radio with dials rather than buttons. I don't know why you need all this stuff. I mean, really, is there any better way to drive along a coast road with the sun shining early in the morning? There ain't too many cars I'd rather be in than this at the moment.
I think I've just fallen in love with that car, Mike. I can't imagine for a moment that BMW will have any trouble whatever shifting that car in enormous numbers. But isn't the Z3 market becoming a little bit overcrowded?
Well, in fact, that's a very interesting point you make. In fact, anybody's got an order in for a Z3 of any type, no matter what the engine specification, they're going to have a long wait for that vehicle. If you place an order as of today, you'll have to wait the best part of a year probably for your car to arrive. It is a very crowded market. There's the Porsche Boxster, which we've featured on the programme. Yeah. Personally, I love that vehicle, but it's 35 grand. This Z3 starts at 19,995, different price league altogether. The Empire, Mercedes have come in with the SLK. To me, that's an old man's car. It's not quite got it. You know, there's also the MGF, of course.
You think the Z3, it cuts it, though?
Absolutely, and I think really you've got to look at that asking price. 20 grand, very tempting.
OK, well, after the break, Mike will be back in conversation with Stirling Moss. Join us very soon. Hi and welcome back. Stirling Moss, legend of the track, is one of our regular contributors to the Men and Motors channel. Let's join him and Mike Rutherford again in conversation in Stirling's private study. Mike asked him whether he thought it would be a fairer system if road tax was abolished and replaced by a further tax on fuel.
I wouldn't want to, because I think if we did that, it'd probably cause inflation or push up the price of goods and so on. Unless you bring in 2 levels of petrol, and you have, you know, for trucks they you know, like we had during the war with blue fuel or something. So I don't know that I would actually. I think it's a good thought, because after all, the people who should really pay the most money are those who wear the roads out quickest, you know. But having said that, I think it would be bad for the economy probably.
Yeah. It just seems a bit archaic that in 1996 we still have this practice where you go to the post office or you send off this little disc and you tear it out and you put it on your windscreen, and this proves you're paying your road fund line. And of course the other problem is that it's open to fraud enormously, whereas if you put that tax on fuel, then you eliminate fraud overnight.
I can see the benefits, but I think probably if you spoke to an economist or somebody, they could prove to you or to me that it really wasn't the way to go. I'm surprised actually that there are different stages or levels of taxation for cars.
What would you do with somebody if you caught them without that insurance disc on their windscreen? I mean, how serious an offence is that?
I think one has to look at it in the worst way. I think it's terribly important myself. I really do, because you have to look at it in the way that if they hit a child or a grown up or what have you and cause them really bad damage, who's going to pay for their hospitalisation and whatever things they need? So I think it is terribly important.
The other disc that you often don't like on windscreens is that nice bright orange disabled disc. Tell me why.
I feel very strongly about this, because I feel that people who are truly disabled deserve to be able to park more or less where they need to. But I personally also know of people who use their mother or their aunt's car and use it when they shouldn't do so. So I think that the disabled permit should have the person to whom it applies, a picture of them, so you can say, well, is that person in the car? That's the first thing. I think it should have the name of the doctor who said this person is disabled, because quite often you see people who are not disabled. Now maybe they have some heart murmur or something, but I would like to know. And I do know of so much abuse of it, and of course it's probably not as bad here as it is in America, where you get all these disabled places they can park. But I think it is something that ought to be looked at.
and I'm sure you'll just clarify this point before all the letters and phone calls come in, you're not suggesting for one moment that people who deserve the orange badge, the disabled badge, shouldn't get them.
Oh no, I think they should.
Absolutely.
I'm absolutely for it. I mean, I have had a disabled permit before when I've been disabled, or when I've had a shunt. And I'm not capable. You know?
Quite.
And I think it's okay. I think you should be able to have one when you really need it.
Yeah.
But what I hate to see is somebody using it who hasn't got the right.
By their very nature, those orange discs go to elderly people. Are we allowed to say elderly in these politically correct
yes, I'm
days?
getting on. Yes.
Well, you're a pensioner yourself, aren't you?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I know what you're going to say. Should we be tested? Yes, I suppose we should. I'm not the person to say it because I've taken one driving test, and because I did something that wasn't correct on, I forget what it was now, but anyway. Oh yes, I wasn't going quick enough on the motorway or something.
That was your first test?
Yeah, my first test except for a motorbike, yes.
In what year was that?
Now, just recently.
Oh, okay.
Because you didn't have to. If you've had a license since 1945, you don't have to, which is ridiculous, because you don't have to take a driving test, you know. Because in 45 you didn't need them, and therefore you've got user rights. But do I think older people? I think yes, they should. I think it's only realistic that they should be appraised and reappraised. I don't mean necessarily every year, but I think probably when you're a pensioner, you ought to have it maybe every other year or every 2 or 3 years, because one needs to know the different road arrangements and also how competent that person is.
And there'll be more conversation from the private study next week. We've almost got to go now, sadly, but first, let's look at Toyota's latest attempt to break into the mainstream executive car market.
No, this is not a Nissan Almera about to be pushed over a cliff. The new Toyota Camry has just gone on sale in the UK, but you would be forgiven if you couldn't remember what the old model looked like. After all, Camry sales in the UK haven't exactly been a success story. Toyota, however, feel that they now have a car which is closer to British motor buying public taste. The main market for the huge Camry has always been America. In fact, it's been in the top 5 sellers for years, where large and reliable obviously come higher on the wish list than maybe the British motorists need for good handling and manoeuvrability. That's why in January you'll have the option to buy the new Camry Sport, developed by Toyota GB for the UK market only, with lowered suspension and a maybe more youthful look. There are 2 engine choices, an all-new 3-litre V6 24-valve engine and a revised 2.2-litre engine. The automatic gearbox on the V6 is electronically controlled to smooth out gear changes, even altering the shift pattern to suit the driving style as measured by the throttle movements. Inside, the usual thoughtful touches executive cars have are in abundance. We'll be driving the new Camry soon, but for now we can tell you the Camry 2.2 starts at £19,600. The 3-litre V6 version will have an on-the-road price of £24,600.
The new Toyota Camry. Now, I think I know the answer to this question. You're driving a BMW 5 Series at the moment, aren't you?
I am indeed.
Now, would you rather be going home today in that Toyota Camry or your BMW 5 Series?
That is a very stupid question.
It is.
Because there's no contest, really. I mean, to me, that's everything I hate about motor cars and this business, how they can keep churning out boring cars like the Camry, which change very little and are just so dull. Toyota is such an innovative company. They've done so much for the motor industry. I've seen their facilities in Japan. Marvellous products, and they still churn out junk like that. I mean, it's not junk because it just needs a personality. It needs some presence. It needs a sort of gotta-have-it factor. I mean, honestly, Andrew, if I ever go and place an order for a car like that, put me out of my misery, please, and take me out of this world. I would never, ever be seen dead in a car like that. Well, maybe for the odd quick test, if it's a freebie.
OK. The next big event in the motoring calendar, the next motoring fest is the Detroit show. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that the biggest show in the world, Detroit?
It's one of them, certainly. It's certainly my favourite, I think, of all the shows. Geneva, Paris, Tokyo, Detroit. I mean, it's just a wonderful town. And just to correct you, because you are slightly wrong, the LA show comes the week before the Detroit show. I'll be popping into the LA show first, because that's the sort of bloke I am. And then I'll be flying up to Detroit, Murder City, the murder capital of the US. But a great town. There's just such a buzz in Detroit. I can't quite put my finger on it, but you really feel that you're at the heart of something that's really happening. Motor City, of course, and one of the great car production centres in the world. And a great show. I can guarantee there's going to be an awful lot of interesting product there.
Anything in particular you're looking forward to, either in LA or Detroit?
I'm I'd be very surprised if Chrysler don't unveil half a dozen new concept cars in Detroit. It's the better show of the two. The relevance of those is that Chrysler then go on to actually put these concept cars into production. Usually, you know, a lot of car manufacturers have a cynical approach to concepts and prototypes. They wheel them out really as an apology for their existing models, and they say, look, the only way we're going to get any people to come and take a look at us is with these vehicles. With Chrysler, it's a bit different. They actually produce the concepts and then they go ahead and build them. That's why we see cars like the Chrysler Viper in production. That was formerly a concept car. And I also hear a little rumour that Volkswagen might have one or two surprises for people down in Detroit this year. So watch that space.
All right, great. Well, we look forward to all those reports from Los Angeles and also from Detroit. Going back to Chrysler, just while we're talking about Chrysler, they're really coming into the European market now, aren't they? We're seeing more Chryslers in the UK.
Oh, and we're going to be seeing a lot more Chrysler products on the programme over the coming weeks. And, you know, there's the big three in Detroit, GM, Vauxhall as we know them in the UK, Ford, and Chrysler, the small guy in that little threesome. But really, they're coming on very, very strongly. And I tell you, Ford and GM are worried.
Listen, Mike, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks, Andrew.
And you will come back again, won't you? Because it gets awfully lonely in here by myself, you know.
I'll be back.
All right. Well, we wait for those reports from your good self and Ginny Buckley from Detroit early in the new year. Look out for those. Well, time's out on us now. The checkered flag is down. From all of us on Four Wheels Good, a very good night to you.